You're listening to Sonica on Wholehearted Men.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wholehearted Men Show with your host, Sonica. Every day in the news, we stand witness to examples of a world in which more and more men are showing up broken, misdirected, aggressive, violent, emotionally and mentally unstable. There's a visible lack of emotional intelligence evident in male culture that needs education and rehabilitation. We need to teach men how to love. On the Wholehearted Men Show, we explore how to help men live life with heart. The Wholehearted Men Show is sponsored by the Institute for Wholehearted Men, whose primary goal is to nurture the emotional and mental health of men so they can engage with the world wholeheartedly. Join us as we take this journey to change the hearts of men, one conversation at a time.
The Wholehearted Men Show. The Wholehearted Men Show. The Wholehearted Men Show.
Isabella Mukanda, born and bred in Zambia, has lived in the U.S. for 15 years. Married for 22 years, she divorced and has been divorced for 3.5 years. She's a mother of 4 girls, holds a bachelor's degree in English nonfiction writing, a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction, and is currently pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. She's a writer, speaker, human rights activist, and advocate. She is a practicing Christian, a lover of people, health, progress, and a more united world. She is currently employed full-time and is a mother full-time to 4 children. She also spends her time studying as a full-time student and says she has little time for anything else. Good afternoon and welcome to the Wholehearted Men Show with your host, Sonica. And today, actually, I have the pleasure of speaking with Isabella Mkando Shamambo. And there is, you probably heard a little bit about her in the bio, but Isabella kind of struck a nerve with me when she posted something actually really thought-provoking on Facebook. And I reached out to her because I've been doing this series on ordinary people with extraordinary stories. And in reading a little bit about what she had written about, I just thought she would be a great person to kind of get into a conversation with about this D word, which is divorce, right? And really how coming from Zambia or being an African woman, really the perspective in terms of society, family, self is in terms of dealing with divorce. So welcome, Isabel.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So is there anything else from the bio? I know you sent the bio and I've shared the bio. Is there anything else you want our audience to know about you?
Not much, really.
Not much, really. Okay, so we can dive right into it, right? So, you remember you do remember your writing on divorce and remarriage, right? And there's something that you wrote. You said when you go through divorce as a woman, it's the most trying thing, and you don't have to do it. You can stay in your marriage and endure whatever is there for you to endure until it gets better or not. If your husband is the one who wants a divorce, you squirm in your seat and just take the high road until you heal. But immediately we are aware that our marriages are failing as women, we believe we need another man to be our savior. And I understand the feeling. That is how the world has groomed us. And then you start going on to having gone through a divorce once, the divorce after more than 20 years of marriage. I must tell you how devastating it was. So we'll start there. Why don't you kind of walk us through that stage 1?
Well, foremost, divorce is not something that happens in one day. You know, you can go to court and the judge will pronounce you as divorced. However, it is a series of circumstances, and sometimes it takes years and years to get to that one day. And yet, people seem to be so surprised about it. For a lot of women, we have to make up our minds about a lot of things before we actually step out. Personally, I had gone through a lot of things before I decided I was going to file for divorce. And foremost, I lost my father in the year 2012. And for some reason, I felt like through the whole period that he was sick, he suffered several strokes. He had an endless hiccup for 5 months. I felt like I was alone throughout that time. We buried him. I was talking to my then husband, and somewhat, for some reason, I can't even remember what I said, he reminded me about his mother's death.
And when was his mother's death compared to your father's?
His mother passed away in the year 2000. And my mother-in-law was a wonderful woman. I loved her. We had a beautiful relationship. I was very broken by her marriage. And I put myself out just to make sure I did everything I could to, clear her house and help with as much as I could help and stand by my husband. And there's always that thought you have behind you that you were so close to your parents, you love them so much, and you have a partner. Somehow, when you lose your parents, your partner will be there to comfort you, to console you, and you're going to spend that time together. I felt like that didn't happen for me. Like I was going through this very lonely period. Everybody was back home in Zambia. The funeral was in Zambia. And the only person who was really close to me here was my husband. And my kids were still young. So when he reminded me about his mother, I was so hurt. And the circumstances of that day.
Sort of implication or assumption that you had behaved differently to support him?
No. I might have said something. Well, I think I might have said something to the point I am still mourning my dad. He was just buried today. I also lost my mother. And whatever my understanding was, I just lost it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it was more so that he was reaching for something to explain his lack of support. Okay.
Not necessarily. Maybe that. Maybe to me, the way I interpreted was just this lack of feeling, which implied whatever you are going through, you're not the only one who's lost a parent.
Okay, I get it.
I lost my mom. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I lived in that bedroom. We were that separate for a whole year. Pretty much a whole year. I lived there and he was in the other room. But even from there, I was trying. And eventually on Christmas Day of that year, of the following year, when I did decide, the same year or the following year, I'm not very sure now, my mind is a little bit fuzzy. When I did decide to go back, it didn't take long. Something happened and I went ahead and I filed for divorce. It's like I'd had enough and that was it.
Wow. Okay. How did you navigate? Were the kids? You said the kids were young. How young were your kids at this point?
Yes. So my oldest was about 17 by then. She was already in college. Her immediate young sister was about 15. And then I had a 5-year-old, now this was 2014 when I filed for divorce. I had a 10-year-old and my youngest was about 3. She was just a baby. Yes.
How did your, seeing as you had a college age and a 15-year-old, how did they take it? And how did you explain that to them? How did you explain? And I'm assuming your husband is also Zambian, right? He's Zambian, like you said.
Yes,
He's
yes,
Zambian. So,
exactly.
so we're still going to have to deal with part of what you talked about in your cultural stuff and stigma.
Yes,
We're getting to that, but seeing as we're in the house now, I really want to deal with like the emotions, the feelings, the how you dealt with the children and all that. Yeah. So
yes.
how did you explain that to the children and how did they take it?
Well, over the years, like when we had been having all these issues, so like I said, divorce doesn't happen in one day. So we had been going through a lot of issues, and the kids were aware of some of those things, like the differences and everything else. But I felt it was my responsibility to prepare them for the fact that there was a possibility I could file for divorce. So I had been talking to them about it for a long time, like just to prepare their minds. I mean, I'm always like that. I like to prepare people for things. I don't like to spring surprises. So I would be talking to them about it, and they would ask me questions. And at first, my oldest was very upset about it. She did not understand. I tried to explain to her, and she became very, very hostile
Towards you.
towards me. Yes, like she was blaming me for whatever was that. I told her to say there was a reason, and I was not being unreasonable.
Right.
So we kind of waited it out. And honestly, my kids did encourage me to go ahead and leave.
Oh,
Eventually, yes.
wow.
They did encourage me to go ahead and leave. In fact, when I left, I did consider going back. And my oldest daughter told me to say, whatever you left is what you will find. It's not going to change. So you can stay where you are. And
So were your kids staying with their father or they were with you at this time?
I took them with me.
You took
I
them
did
with you.
take them.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
I took them with me. And I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have a house because I had tried to negotiate. Initially, before I filed for the divorce, my negotiation was, I asked my then husband to say, you could leave us here in the house and go and live somewhere else. Let's just have this separation. Maybe if we separate, we live in different places, we are going to learn to appreciate each other eventually. So we will realize the importance of us being together.
Right.
Of course, he refused. I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, the kids were there. That was our house. I figured he could live alone in an apartment for a short period of time and whatever. So he refused. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't really have a job. He had a job. I had a part-time job. It wasn't paying me much. I couldn't really manage to pay the rent. So when I did decide to leave, I had found some kind of a permanent job, but really it wasn't, there were a lot of things that I had to figure out. I did not sit down to figure them all out. I left and I went and lived in a shelter.
Wow.
For women. Yes.
Wow. With the children?
With my kids.
Wow. 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 Okay. That took me, that caught me by surprise. I know we talked a little bit about, but that one was heavy because I kind of know, through my nonprofit work, I kind of know the environments that, are created when people actually end up having to go to like a women's shelter, a women's house, and, going to a women's house with 4 kids, that's pretty heavy, How did you navigate? How long were you at the shelter?
Well, I was there with my 3 kids. My older one was already in university. So
she was already in college. Okay.
Yes, it was very hard.
Not that makes it better, by the way.
Yes.
3 or 4, that, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for those who have never been to a shelter like that, so this is a protected shelter for abused women, and we live there under lock and key, kind of.
Right.
So it's just this building you see, like a long building, not much happening, but in the background, so they have all these rooms where women are housed with their children and protected. You have a kitchen. So they have dormitory-like rooms where you have bunk beds and you share. And so they put me in a room with bunk beds on which my kids could sleep, like 6 bunk beds.
Right.
And we shared the room with another young woman who had a baby and another lady who really didn't have a child, but she just lived in there. And the first night, of course, it's facing the hostility of don't turn the lights on and stuff like that. And so I had to be very assertive in there. Honestly, there was some people were very aggressive, but I honestly had to pull my best self for me to navigate this whole situation with the people that took care of the shelter and the people that lived in the shelter. And so the people that lived in the shelter were all kinds of people.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And the people that took care of the shelter were people who never took anybody for granted. Like, I mean, they were trained to be tough, to insist on certain rules and that those rules should be followed and everything else. And for a person like me, like I was a free person, I had a job, I had my own car, I could come and go, and somewhat being in that shelter, my family and I looked like, honestly, we had so much that a lot of people there didn't have.
They didn't have, right?
Yes, which we were so together. We cared about school, even if I had to go to McDonald's after work, stop by there, do my schoolwork, then get back to the shelter, or take my kids to McDonald's to go and study from there and bring them back. And meantime, their dad was trying to get them from school and grab them and take them back to the house.
Okay, so he was attempting to at least, and maybe the right word is not at least, but he was trying to take them home, to like grab them from school and take them home.
Precisely.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
Okay.
precisely. But then because of the kind of protections they were under, that would be considered illegal.
Right. Right. So you were given through the court, you had started the court, so you were given custody of the children?
Eventually, here in Florida, they don't really call it custody. Even if they use the word custody, we kind of have what they call parental sharing.
Okay.
You kind of share the kids. So they do go and spend time with their dad. They live with me. I'm accountable for them. And I have to make school decisions and things like that with him. I mean, for parents who really work very well together, that is ideal. But if you don't, it is another living hell.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to read the next section, right? I'm going to read the next section. Like I said, there's so much, we could spend a whole bunch of time just on here because there's just so much you've added. And like I said, Meek, I'm now seeing the picture. I can imagine the shelter because, like I said, through my nonprofit work, I'm familiar with, shelters like that. I'm familiar with places like that. In fact, in my last place that I worked, some of the students that I got were people that were in a kind of a shelter, but it was more for people who were recovering from substance abuse, and it was a block away from us.
Yes.
So you go through this divorce, and I'm not trying to fast forward us, but I'm going to move us because you said having gone through a divorce once, a divorce after more than 20 years of marriage, I must tell you it was devastating. I cannot even begin to tell you how I just wanted to have another partner, and not for sex at all. It has never been a prime for my relating, but for companionship, friendship, and just because I was afraid to be alone. But I lived alone for 4 years before my divorce was finalized. I learned things about myself that a second relationship would soon highlight. So I'm going to stop there. And let's talk about these 4 years and then kind of walk into this next relationship that you're about to highlight. Okay.
Yeah. So 4 years of hell, of court battles. And of course, I did go, and so we had court orders to split summertime. For some reason, I really thought it would be fair that the kids spend half of the summer with their dad and half of the summer with me. And the first summer, this was after I'd filed for the divorce, and they went to be with their dad, he would not let me have access to them at all. So I couldn't phone them, I couldn't talk to them, I couldn't see them. And somebody who used to be my friend was taking care of them, and she began to punish me with words and behaviors that were really, really terrible. I had no choice but to go and pull my divorce petition and go and grab my kids, because with the court order in place, I could not do that. So I withdrew my divorce petition, and I went and I got my kids and brought them back with me. By this time, I already had an apartment.
So explain that for the those of us who don't know the process. Basically, you're saying because you had your divorce papers in, and
Yes.
they had certain stipulations to the divorce, you couldn't legally go and grab your kids in this situation.
No, I couldn't.
The only way you could do it was by going and withdrawing your divorce petition.
Yes.
In that way, there would be no legal ramifications for you going and grabbing your kids.
Precisely.
Wow. Now, did you then have to go back and put it in after you grabbed your kids? I mean, how did that work?
Well, and this is what happened. So when I grabbed my kids, and because of what had been happening, for some reason, I thought there was a very big misunderstanding between my children's dad and myself. And so I suggested we, as a family, we go for psychotherapy. And after the psychotherapy, then we would sit down and consider how best to go about the divorce if we still wanted to do it.
Okay. How did that
Because
work?
I was honestly very surprised at the things that were, of course, I didn't know. Maybe in my naivety and my ignorance, I really did think that even after fighting for divorce, I would maintain some sort of an amicable relationship with the person that I knew. But the person that I was divorcing is the person I never knew. Totally. And that was me giving myself a chance. But that psychotherapy did not work out. And 10 days later, he went and filed for divorce.
Ah, okay. So you had pulled the divorce, grabbed your kids, get into psychotherapy, thinking that, maybe you could reconcile some things and get on the same page. And did he attend psychotherapy? Did he attend therapy?
No, he disappeared with my friend and the kids and went to the beach. I went to that first psychotherapy session alone, and it was the most horrible experience I've ever had.
Wow.
Emotionally, yes.
Wow. So you mentioned this friend, and so this friend had, what was the relationship now? Was it still a friend in terms of friend to him, or what? Because you said this person was probably somebody you thought was a friend. This person
Yeah. Yes. Kind of a person who didn't have a lot of friends, who didn't have friends and family at all. And me walking over because of my nature and personality and embracing her and making her a lot like part of my family. She had kids who were as young as my second youngest child, and they used to spend a lot of time together. So I'd look after her children whenever she had to go places, whenever she had to do things. And that is how it was. And my kids, my oldest kid helped her with mathematics and college and things like that. That was the kind of friendship. And so when I filed for divorce, she turned on me, and she really, really, I mean, I cannot even begin to tell you. I'll just leave it at that. She made my life hell that summer.
Must have been very painful. And
it was extremely Painful,
been very
yes.
painful. And
Yes.
I think, you know, as part of this conversation, like I said, we are establishing kind of the base,
Yeah.
because I think you shared in what you wrote, you shared some very, very strengthening language, which I think, as you know, our listeners and viewers are sitting, have to kind of begin to understand the world in which you were swirling in order to know how you've ended up, you know. And I think
Yes.
that's important. So I'm going to go back to a little bit more about what you wrote. Need, after the foolishness of thinking and believing that I needed someone, a man by my side to live a normal life, I can testify to you today that my experiences of the past few years have confirmed to me that all this pressure we put on girls to get married, to get into relationships, to become mothers and wives needs to cease. Marriage is a good thing. It requires a lot of work and dedication. However, we must never consider it the norm for everyone. Women want things that to have in a marriage is to create a modern day problems. Women must have a choice what they want to do with their lives and not be afraid that they will go past the flower of their age. What absolute nonsense. Yes, I said that. We must never guilt those who are not in it or pretend that when we are in marriages, we are better than those who are not. So what is very clear what you're saying, but I think we kind of talked a little bit more and you had a little bit more profound thoughts on this in terms of what society says and even culturally, what we do culturally in terms of, you know, the young girls when they are, you know, even my girls now, it's like, yeah, I have one girl who watches the wedding shows and all this kind of wedding dress and blah, blah, blah. And my little one is like, I'm not getting married. I'm not having kids, but she's only 8, you know.
Yes.
Um, So I think you were kind of alluding to a lot of that. So tell me your thoughts on that, and kind of in the context of you moving from this pain that you were in, starting to discover yourself, and like you said, into this new relationship. Let's try and grab a little bit of that part.
Okay. So my pain led me to another friendship, another relationship. So I'm very vulnerable emotionally, and I really need somebody. I'm getting lonely in all this darkness and everything. And so I had a friend, not necessarily because I wanted a relationship initially, but somebody who I could talk to, another African here from another country. And he was very helpful, a minister, we called a man of God. So he helped me a lot. And eventually, after my divorce, we did get into a relationship and decided, maybe we could live together, and we walked to the altar. At this particular point in time, I had, there were a lot of things about marriage which I had been stripping off little by little, like, onion peels and stuff like that, and just getting to the bottom there. Like, I don't care about this, I don't care about that, and I don't care about that. And just down to the basics. Of course, I did get into a relationship and walk to the altar with a man I would otherwise not have done when I was much younger. But this is me making a decision as an older person because I was vulnerable. I made myself vulnerable. And I thought another relationship, somebody to talk to, somebody to help each other with, and got into it. But I only was there for 8 months and I was out. By then,
let me. So you were in this marriage for 8 months and you left. And what did you discover in these 8 months that made you literally say, I'm out?
I did not even call it a marriage because, we didn't get a marriage certificate. According to the laws of this land, even if we did get married in church. What did I discover? The same grinding routine of marriage that I had left.
Okay.
We have these walls and structures that we have built as a society which guard marriages. And whether we know it or not, we kind of hit against those walls and still get back, hit against them and still get back. And so we keep doing things the same way. The man I was getting married.
Excuse me.
had also been divorced. You know, he said he had learned this from his previous marriage. He had learned this and stuff like that. And of course, we went back, and he was still just like every other man. And my daughter, who was 15 by then, looked at me, and then she says, "Mom, I don't know how you don't see or realize this. That man is just exactly like Dad. There's no difference." That floored me, you know, because honestly, in the beginning, that is not the way I saw it. And even as we are going forward, that's not the way I saw it. But my kids are very observant. And so I began to go over the same issues and the same problems that I did not want to face. And these are not huge problems. I think these are material differences about how we do things as men and as women.
Give me an example. Yeah, give me an example of something that you are calling, you know, like material differences. Like for somebody who may not understand, like what was something that you figured was?
Yeah, like for example, I had been in school since 2012. I spent a lot of time going to school. So I was doing two things. I was doing a master's degree full-time, and I was doing prerequisites for nursing school full-time. And I had a full-time job, and I had kids. I had very little for anything else. And I had made this very clear before we got into there. But when I got into the home, my impression was this exasperation about the fact that I was spending so much time doing these other things and maybe not giving my partner as much time as I should, you know, and then a suggestion. And then I began to receive all these calls, maybe from my relatives or from his relatives. I didn't have this. It's all of a sudden, it's like all these people are coming into my life to tell me what I should do, how I should behave, how I should handle this. And some would even suggest, well, just stop school for now and take care of your husband until things are settled. Maybe after 2 years, you can start. I had been in school since 2012. This is 2017. I had suffered so much, and I was just building up my life so I could be a little bit more comfortable in this country. I was not ready to do that. And so things began to fall off little by little. And of course, it was just personality stuff and whatever. But he was a wonderful man in so many ways. However, I just could not handle some of the major things, and I left.
Okay. Was there any therapy? Did you know, I remember you talked about the psychotherapy part, but that was with the ex-husband. In terms of in those 4 years where you lived alone leading into this 8 months, did you do any like therapy? Did you sit and do any personal work and, you know, kind of getting to know yourself work? Was there any of that during that time?
Personally, yeah, getting to know myself. I've been very interested in in knowing myself for years, even prior to that. So I would spend a lot of time trying to get to know myself, and especially to also understand others. So I have this mind where I focus so much on the good in people than the negatives. And I think I've paid for that a lot. But then in knowing myself and understanding myself, I did have a lot of reflection in those 4 years, and especially those 8 months when I came out.
But you didn't go to any like professional. You didn't go to a therapist. You didn't see a therapist. Okay.
No,
all right.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you do this 8 month thing. How did you get out of it?
Sorry?
How did you get out of the 8 months? I mean, I remember you threw out there that we really didn't have a marriage license. We just went to the church. So how did you get out of the marriage? How did that go, and how did that work out?
A lot of things which led to that. Foremost, the financial part, the expenses we had for the celebration and everything else meant that we didn't have as much money then in the first few months as we had coming in. And so during most of that period, I was paying off debts and things like that. And my partner didn't really have a full-time job. Yes. And there was paperwork that he really needed to be done. And somewhat us getting married would kind of open those doors and everything just to make things better for him. Of course, he had bought this house and we had to pay a mortgage and whatever. And so me refusing to get that marriage license led to a lot of unpleasantness in our relationship, because every time he came and talked about it, I told him I wasn't ready. I did not want to get the marriage license, not yet. And he felt like I was holding him back from being as helpful to the family as he wanted to be. But I think for me, what was important was our relationship. That I wanted to see that our relationship was better, that we could live together, we could endure and everything else. And so he had left and went to live somewhere where he had a job, and he would come from time to time. And most of the times when he would come back, we would be arguing about the marriage license, we would be arguing about that. And somewhat because of my personality, I was always on the edge, always at that point where I would almost say, oh, let's go and get it. Well, let's go and get it. Like I'll just be exasperated. Let's go and get it. But then I kept telling myself I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that until Christmas, until December 31st of 2018. I went to work, left the whole family and him in the house. And when I came back, he was not there. His clothes were gone and a lot of things had disappeared from the house. And I called him and I called him and I called him. I didn't know where he was. So this is 1st January of 2019. And so when I called him, then he says, I don't think you want to live with me. I want you to go and I want to go with you to the court to go and get that marriage license, and for you to stop using, to change your name, your last name to my name, and a lot of things that he demanded. And I really thought they were outrageous demands.
You thought they were outrageous demands.
Yes, I thought they were outrageous because it's just like, you do this, and do this, and do this. And honestly, well, I'd like to think about myself as a kind of woman you come to and say, well, let's talk about this, rather than giving me a shopping list of things that I need to do, So, and then he says, oh, the landlord, the person who sold him the house, wants their money. We are back on this. I said, honestly, if we can live through this period for the next 2 months, it will be so much better because I'll have the money. Then we can pay off all these debts. Well, and the landlord writes me a letter and well, she's not even the landlord because I know she sold the house to him. Well, your man hasn't paid me all the monies. So I want you guys, I'm giving you 24 hours to leave the house.
Oh, wow.
Okay, 24 hours. I'm just like, it's New Year's Day. Where am I going? I used to live in a house before I came here, a house that I rented. And right now my credit is not so good. For me to go back and find a house, it's going to be much harder. Well, you have to leave. So I began to pack my things and I called him and I told him, I said, well, it seems you are aware she wants us. She says, I already handed over my keys. She wants us to leave and whatever, but I don't know where you're going to go. So I would try and find a house. So maybe we can go there, all of us. And then from our discussion, it somewhat, I got the sense that he was in on this arrangement. And I was I was very upset about that. And so I just said, okay, fine. And I went back home and I had a truck and I packed my things. And I had told him, I said, if I get out of the house, I don't have anywhere to live. I said, I'm serious. I will live in the car and my kids will go to their dad. I don't want them to be there, but they will go and live with their dad and I'll live in my car until I find a house. But I am not going to tolerate this. So I packed my things and he came, no, don't leave. Let's just work this out. The money that you have, you're going to get another house. Let's pay for this house. I said, no, I think I'm done. I'm going. And I left. Thankfully, there was another brother I knew who helped me find an apartment and I paid up that time I was almost going into nursing school. So honestly, I used some of the money which I was supposed to be paying for school to pay for the rental, establish myself and come here. It was a very difficult beginning, really, really hard. And so I have had this experience with the first man. I'm having this experience with this second man. I get into my house and I begin to live alone, and it is so peaceful. It's so quiet. It's so beautiful. My kids are so happy. And I had to tell myself to say, what have I been looking for? What honestly did I want? Even when I lived alone in my first apartment, I could do it. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my kids. I don't need all that trouble of being in a relationship or being in a marriage, of having the whole world coming up to me and telling me what to do simply because I chose to be in a relationship with a man. And that's a place where I am.
No, clearly, because I'll go back to some of what you said, which I think so. I'm not speaking to dismiss the idea of marriage, rather point out that not everyone needs to be married, and we cannot vilify or look down on those who are not. My life past marriage, my experimental life as a single person, mothering and doing life, gives me a lot of freedom to grow, to discover myself, and to make choices for my life that I have never given the opportunity to from birth. I always had this yoke around my neck that forever said you must get married to be a normal woman. And hey, if there was a sperm bank where women could easily get seed to have children, live their lives, I would say go for it. I know that the last thing I said is likely to raise a storm, but it's not meant to trash matrimony. There are alternatives we are never offered. We must now learn to think about them. Thank you. So very, very culturally taboo, what you said there, right? We come from a place where how dare you say those kinds of things, right? How dare you insult the sanctity of matrimony and marriage and the way that we do it. And you're actually even suggesting that women can have children outside of normalcy. How dare you, Isabella? So tell us why, Isabella, you feel that this is where you have arrived, and what kind of, we've heard some of the circumstances, but what made you kind of put that thought together? What is the driving force of that?
I have 4 daughters. I have 8 sisters, 1 brother. I have a lot of young women who are my relatives scattered around this country. I've seen very little good in other relationships. I have witnessed. We are not improving the whole essence of marriage. We are not working on it. We feel like we can do marriage in 2020, the same way we did it in 1920. And that's not right. The same way they did it 2,000 years ago. And that's not right. Things have changed. And especially for a lot of Africans who come to the USA, you come here, you find that the culture is different. I think for you to survive and to thrive, you have to understand the culture, embrace it, and merge for you to survive. Otherwise, you cannot survive. We come from Zambia. In Zambia, I took care of my house. I worked. I could hire maids. I could pay them. They helped me in so many ways. I had family to help me with the kids and everything else. So to come to the USA with 4 kids and to have a husband who thinks I should take care of him the same way I used to take care of him in Zambia, I should go to work and come back home and he will live his life like he used to live in Zambia. That is asking for a bit too much. And if a woman stands up and says, I need your help, I need your assistance, it is not being submissive. And that is always the word which comes up. You are not submissive. And in Christian circles, that is a big word. I don't like it.
I think it's a word. Yeah. Go ahead. Finish.
Yes, not because I don't think that I'm submissive, but because I think that the word is abused, and we use it to suppress women and to oppress them too. We refuse to just change and adapt and work out as friends in marriages. So when I'm talking to young women, you desire to get into a marriage. There is a lot that goes on in marriage. The young man you fall in love with, he's cooing, talking in your ear. He's being so sweet. He's being so nice. I had a wonderful marriage for the first 10, 15 years. We were good friends. We had misunderstandings and disagreements, but basically my relationship was wonderful. I'm not one to go out and show people that my relationship is wonderful when at home things are falling apart. I'm not like that. So if things were falling apart in the house, you would definitely see it in my face and feel it.
Exactly.
So,
on your sleeve, right?
Yeah, precisely. So is it necessary for you to get married and discover that marriage is this huge battle which completely changes you and alters you and your whole personality and your thought processes, and like you just completely lose control of yourself? Is it necessary? Is it something you want and they'll stay and they'll shipikisha, like they say in Zambia, but
And
to be like that? I think marriage should be enjoyed. Yes, marriage has got problems. Yes, it's hard work, but we should enjoy it. We should be ourselves. We should grow within our marriages. We should not be the same way we were before, nor should we retrogress. We should progress. That is about marriage. So that's why I'm saying to young people, some young people are sitting out there waiting for partners. Like I'm going to meet Mr. Right someday. We're going to get married and I'm going to have my kids, because, well, you can't have kids in marriage. And I'm going into the taboo one here. And I'm saying, if it's getting too late, honestly, if I was 25 in this period, in this time and season, and I lived in this country and I understood things the way they are, I would have so many choices. And I
you'd
would
have
be
done
like,
things differently. Yeah. I think I'm gonna play advocate. You're not devil's advocate, but just an advocate, because I think that you've brought up so many things. I think what really got me about what you wrote was, it was very, number one, it was very different languaging from what you would normally hear from a woman of African descent, right? That was number one. You were proposing really a real radical approach to doing life the way people have normally done. You've said some things which I've always said, which is it doesn't make sense when you don't know yourself to marry somebody who doesn't know themselves and think that you're going to become one whole thing, when in reality you're just two people who don't know yourselves, and what you're basically creating is a mess. I've always told people that there's no such thing as you bring 50%, the other person brings 50%, because when you bring it together, yeah, it might be 100%, but 100% is really less than 200%. When you are 100%, the other person's 100%, you put those two together, you actually bring 200%, right? And I think that's what catches me. And I think culturally, you know, let's talk about biblically. You talked about submissive. I think people don't necessarily look at that passage in its entirety, because it talks about not only wives submitting, but husbands as well, right? And so when you take one piece of that and you talk about wives submit to your husbands, right? It's, and you look at that like, okay, it's submission. Submission, it does not mean that, I'm going to come and put my foot on your neck and spend the rest of my days, doing it. And it talks about it's really about everybody adapting to how we help each other to be better. And you're very right in terms of this American life where, there are no maids. It's like, I remember being in Zambia and somebody who has a 1-bedroom flat having a maid. And, that's the reality, where we have this society where there is a level of our society that actually survives on the fact that they can get paid by other people to do menial jobs, right? There is that in this country too, But in this country, it's a little bit more expensive for you to get a maid to come and work for you. You have to be making a significant amount of dollars in order for you to have a maid come into your house every day, because even people who are coming into your house every day are making a little bit more than minimum wage. If we could pay people minimum wage to come and clean our homes and trust them, we would. It might be something we could all do, but it's not possible in this place. So a lot of what you said kind of got to me because you were breaking what I call a culture mode. So what do you say to people who say to you, well, this, Isabella, this just sounds like you're bitter. This just sounds like you're bitter and you've had bad experiences, and you can't base your outlook on these bitter experiences.
Well, I'm not bitter, and I know people have called me bitter before, and I have to be truthful to myself. I have checked my heart to see if there's any bitterness. I don't have any bitterness in my heart. If my kids come to me and they say they have met a man and they want to marry and whatever, they are receiving my blessings. I am happy, very, very happy for those who are getting married, those who are in marriages that are enduring. I have, even during the time I was going through my divorce, I have advised other women to consider not going for divorce. Because honestly, divorce just makes things worse. When the Bible says God hates divorce, well, he has reason to hate divorce, because divorce is the other side of the hill that you haven't seen, which is hell. It's anything bad. Because people change when you go through divorce. So that is not supposed to be an alternative. So if divorce is not supposed to be an alternative, you have to be careful when you are stepping into marriage. You really have to be careful. You really have to sit down and determine how your relationship is going to be, where you are going, how you're going to handle things. And you have to talk in advance and be very candid about it. Don't just rush because of adrenaline or falling in love and everything else. I didn't rush, but there are things we could have done beforehand that could have saved us and helped us better as we went along in our marriage. Of course, there's the counseling part and everything else. So consider those things. I'm not bitter. I'm just better. I see things in a better light. I have the perspective of being single before marriage, of being married and then being divorced and then being remarried. In essence, I have a perspective of all these things, and I'm here, and I can tell you, this is my choice. This is how I have chosen to live. I am happy. I am content for now. I'm doing my life the way I'm doing it. I still have young children who go to school and everything. So my life is busy. I have a lot of things that are going on, and I'm hoping after all my kids are gone, I will be busy with other things. Or maybe I'll think about a relationship then. I don't know, but that is just what it is. I just want young women to be careful. And those who are not in relationships, because I hear young women say, oh yeah, I'm so unlucky, I haven't found a man. You know what? Count yourself lucky. You are still blessed. No, honestly.
Yeah.
Count yourself lucky. Don't think you are unlucky. Find things to do with your life. Get busy, get better, and be the best person you can be. If somebody's going to find you, let them find you. If they don't find you, live your life. And consider that sperm bank. That is just me.
Well, I respect the you. As you know, once I read it, I pinged you in Messenger and I told you, I said, real profound thinking, because one of the things that I have committed myself to with, this Wholehearted Men show and the Institute for Wholehearted Men is really just educating the hearts and minds of men. Because one of the things that's real is that, on the other side of this conversation of women and girls growing up and, everybody's wanting to be married and looking for a man, is this understanding that that's not how men are, we're not enculturated that way. We don't sit around thinking about, oh, geez, I've never hung around a guy who's when we were young, talking about, oh, I can't wait until I'm walking down the aisle and I'm wearing a tuxedo, and you know what I'm saying? It's not in our vocabulary. Now, there could be guys who think like that. It's possible, right? It's possible. I just know that in my life, I have never found that guy. Now, as an older person who maybe, yes, you know, I'm with my friend or somebody I love, a guy that I love, I'm close to, who has a girl and he's been with her and he's decided to marry her, I might experience that in terms of the person telling me, oh my God, you know, like one of my friends, I was the best man at his wedding, you know, he was getting married, and I walked through that, the feeling, the excitement, the, you know, getting dressed, the him wanting to be, but we were in our 40s, you know. We're in our 40s, you know. This is a wedding that happened, you know, I can't remember, you know. And so, and that's there's a big dichotomy there, you know. And I think what happens over the years is we have cultures have created this thing, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of the the universal experience, you know. Marriage, having children, and, you know, going forth and multiplying is all part of that great commandment, right? And it's correct, but there is no, we have embraced this Western way of doing things, you know, this Western civilization thing. And coming to Western civilization, I understand how there is resistance by people who are cultured at home to embrace that, because it's like you're losing a piece of yourself. But I think you said something earlier which was very important, which is this thing about you have to adapt, right? You have to adapt to, you know, it's, if I am being more helpful to you, if you're working and thing, and I'm taking care of things at the home when the kids come from school, if I'm available, if we're doing this, it is possible for us to maintain some sort of cultural cadence to our existence if we adapt to where we are, wherever it is. You're in Australia, you can be whatever. What about, you know, it's like that. And like you said, if you're in a place like Zambia where you have extended family help, you have, you know, people that you can pay to help, it already creates a different lifestyle, right?
Yes.
And I think where we fail is that we don't adapt. We don't adapt in our relationships, we don't adapt in the cultures, we don't adapt in the geographies that we get into, and we want to remain stagnant as men or stagnant as women. I don't think it would even work for a man if he had a wife who came here from, you know, from another culture, and then lived exactly what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, she's taking care of everything, you know what I'm saying, and he's trying. I don't think it even fits, because then something is not getting done, something is not growing, there's no space for growth in other things, you know. And I think we have to check ourselves. But I want to thank you. I want to really thank you for really the vulnerability. You know, you were very vulnerable in this post. That's why I felt comfortable to kind of reach out to you, because I knew that for a Zambian woman or an African woman to be able to speak so openly and so freely, that it's an, you know, it's an ordinary person with an extraordinary story that needs to be heard. And I also want to tell, you know, our viewers that we always like to say, this is, you know, this is just a Bella story that she's telling. There could be, you know, her exes could all have their own stories, but I'm interested in her story because she, you know, she shared it in a way that I thought would be compelling for us to hear and compelling for us to understand, and really gives insight. You know, your journey has been a remarkable journey. Now, why don't you tell people a little bit about where you are now? You know, where you are. I think they know where you are emotionally, where you are in terms of relationship, but what are you doing now? Did you finish school? Did you get your nursing degree and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I got my master's degree in the, I mean, the other, so I got, in all those years, I got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and now I'm doing my BSN, which is the Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I will be graduating in April.
Look at you. Look at that.
Yes.
Look at that.
And I have a wonderful job. I've been growing in the company where I was employed. I'm doing a lot of things. I have really grown.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
So I wanted us to end there because everybody needs to know it's a success story, right? That we weren't here just sharing, gripes and, hey, life sucked. It's really about a story about growth.
Yes.
A story about emotional growth, spiritual growth, and professional growth, really, through some trials. We don't wish divorce, let alone two separations, through difficult life on anybody. We don't wish having to go through two shelters with 3 children on anybody, rejection and pain. But we do want understanding, love, growth, support. So here at the Wholehearted Men Show, this is not just, like I always tell people, it's not just a show for men. We also want to hear from our sisters. We want to hear their stories because it truly, informs what the men need to be doing, that they need to show up. We need to show up fully engaged, available, supportive, without these misconceptions ourselves. And that requires learning, because I can guarantee you that nobody's talking to men about how they need to show up. It's not common language. Women are always judging other women. One thing I tell you about men is we don't spend a whole bunch of time judging each other about, how we show up. In fact, men, the problem with men is that we're supportive about dumb stuff. We spend a lot of time supporting each other on dumb stuff and not giving each other good advice. You really need to be conscious and deliberate about finding yourself men who will speak life into you. That's the difference. And, usually it's like you can only go to church and find such men. But that's not the reality, because I've found places where if you're being deliberate about looking for men who are going to speak to you and speak love language to you and speak into your heart, you'll find them. You just need to look hard. And that's why I created this, because we need to be talking to men, and we need men to be listening to stories like yours so that we don't become those men that do those kinds of things.
Yes.
So thank you so much, my sister.
Well, thank you so much. And I must add, thank you so much for this platform. Honestly, in my life, I've always thought there is no place where women can talk to men. It's not there. You just feel like men just don't want to listen to women at all. But thank you for this platform.
No, thank you. And you know what? I know we'll be talking. I'm sure you are going to say something soon, because you say a lot of things that'll make me like, we got to talk about that. All right. You take care, and just hang tight as we, we end. I want to thank Isabella Mkando Shamambo for coming to the Wholehearted Men Show, and you are always welcome to return to the show at any time. Okay?
The Wholehearted Men Show.